Hey, y'all. Welcome to the FlashQuotes podcast, the number one pod for mobile event businesses. Joined today by my friends and FlashQuotes co-founders, Zach Capshaw, Justin Goodhart, also of Goodhart Coffee. Hey, guys. It's been a while. We've been doing some tomfoolery recordings and trickling those out online, but we haven't chatted live on a pod in a while.
Yeah, we're rusty, but we're gonna knock cobwebs off.
Yeah, rock and roll. Well, we're gonna knock through some listener questions that we haven't gotten to. There's been a lot of activity and questions coming from all different angles: email, online, in Instagram, and elsewhere, and then also on our school community. Quick shout out to our school community, SKOOL. If you're a FlashQuotes member, which is free, you could just sign up and then join the school community. It's a great collection of entrepreneurs in the mobile event world, helping each other out, asking questions, getting answers, and we love to pluck questions from there as well. So with that, one of our favorite friends, Cynthia from Always Kind, always has some fantastic questions. And one of her questions that we didn't get to last time was, how do you land annual contracts? And I know you had a lot of thoughts about that, Justin, especially given how lucrative and how much of a boost those can be for your business. If you can land those, they're difficult to get, but once you get them, they can be a huge help. Maybe, I guess, take that however you like. Either it'd be interesting to talk about your first annual contract, if that comes to mind, the journey of getting that, if you've changed your strategy at all, or if they're still coming and being approached a similar way.
Yeah, this is a great one. I think our first annual contract was maybe in 2020, around COVID time, this engineering firm here in Denver. And that was an unusual one because they just wanted to jump right into it. They were kind of doing a return to office and wanted some perks. So we've been serving them, I think, weekly for over 5 years, which is
Wow.
crazy. I wish we would have done this episode a month or so ago before I lost the biggest annual contract we've ever had. I didn't lose it. I should say it was terminated due to, I think, beyond my control and even beyond the person at the company who hired us. I was in San Francisco for a big tech company. We were serving them 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. This was I think it was close to like a $400,000 annual contract that they terminated before the first year was complete, which they had just told us like a month before that they were going to renew for the whole year. So that one was a bit of a bummer to lose. Yeah, I really think all recurring contracts first come from just informal but regular hirings, and people will only informally, or rather like hire you on a recurring basis if you do a great job. I mean, it sounds pretty simple, right? It's just do an amazing job for them. And if they're a company who tends to do recurring bookings, you will obviously be the first in their mind. And that's really how or I should say nearly all of our larger contracts, recurring contracts started, was just like, oh, this company just kind of kept hiring us, and all of them were one-off. And then it slowly evolved into like, well, why don't we formalize this? We'll give you a little more of a discount if you hire us on like a recurring fixed basis with a contract length, and so it can kind of be a win-win where you get more repeat business, they get like a kind of a special rate for doing a more long-term contract. And that's really how almost all of ours have evolved. It's not really rocket science. People like you keep seeing their name pop up at some point. Either they suggest, or bonus points, you can suggest, hey, do you want to start service on a more fixed basis for an additional potential discount?
How do you think about pricing and payment terms? Like, is that something you're negotiating on a case-by-case basis? Are they paying you once a month? I assume they're not paying the whole year up front. So that what does that usually look like? What do you push for when you're trying to think about how they pay you for a big contract like that?
Well, as I think probably all of us event entrepreneurs know, at a certain point, if the invoice amount is high enough, you accept whatever payment terms they give you. Obviously you push for, pay as you go, like pay per service, pay per month. But actually, in the case of that really large contract, like the bigger the business, the bigger the contract, the more of a chance that you're going to get some crappier payment terms. Like, I think I was on net 60 for that, and it was like very confusing to set up that whole like purchase order system. And so I don't think we got paid for 3 months. So I'm like tens of thousands of dollars in the hole on labor, and haven't been paid yet. Not in the hole, but just like I had paid out that much labor. And then finally those purchase orders started hitting. But yeah, ideally you push for as favorable of terms as possible, which is like pay in advance being the most ideal, pay as you go, like immediately after service, and then like pay weekly, pay monthly, or if you get kind of shafted, but you can't say no, then you just accept the net 30, net 60 if you really have to, but those always kind of suck.
What you mentioned either they bring it up or you bring it up. What have you seen experientially there? Is this something that is on the minds of these big corporates where they have brought it up historically, or is it something that you as a business have generally said, hey, you're booking us a lot, we love doing this, it seems like it's a great fit, if it's going to keep happening, then maybe we should think about a contract?
Well, that's a good question. To be honest, I don't really know on that because I don't handle any of the inquiries or bookings anymore. And I don't know if my event planners like suggested it. But yeah, I think you could lightly suggest it, right? Especially if you see their name popping up. I think maybe some of my event planners have done that, but I do think it was primarily client led. So this is like, there's certain company cultures. Like I know there's companies that hire, like large national companies that hire coffee carts all around the US. These are the types of companies that are likely to do that. Like I've seen either I've heard of maybe friends, other catering business owners I know, we've got to chatting like, the Amazons, the Microsofts, the, different, there are some large companies like that who will do these contract. Google, we see a lot of like, if you follow other coffee caterers on Instagram, you've seen all of the Robin Hoods, the Kendra Scotts, the Vioris, like these are companies that hire coffee carts all around the US. And so it's often those ones, especially I would say tech companies who are most likely to splurge because it is pretty expensive. At a certain point, there's the cost benefit of like, wait, if this company was paying me $400,000 a year to do private coffee catering for them, well, why wouldn't they just build their own cafe at a certain point? Now, it's more of a headache. And so that is on the really larger contracts, that is something, just the cost benefit starts to shift away from your favor because they could build out their own in-house cafe, although it would have more headache and more managerial oversight, inventory and all that sort of stuff too.
If you were going to bring it up, like let's just say practical terms, somebody, maybe even Cynthia, right, asked this question, like, how do you land them, right? It seems like the best starting point is looking at all of your events in the last 6 months to a year and just asking yourself how many of those were with the same business and with what frequency, to get a feel for the opportunity to bring up those conversations around starting an annual contract type of agreement. How would you go about doing that?
Well, if they've had our service before, that's a good starting point. There are some times, obviously, if they've had your service, they know what it includes and they know the value of it. They know how awesome it's going to be. There have been a handful of times where people come to us with this sort of inquiry, and this is actually true regardless of whether or not it's a recurring service or just a really big contract. If somebody is coming to you with either of those things and they've never hired a coffee cart or never hired you, one of my first instincts is like, they need to experience us immediately. I need to start skewing the odds in my favor. There's a lot at stake here, a lot of like work for my team, a lot of, income. They need to experience Goodhart coffee immediately. So I may do a comped service. If it's like depending on what it is, $10, $15, $20,000 or more in like value out of this client that I might expect, then and I am considering like, yeah, maybe I have them come to, this actually will feed into a later question. Maybe I have them come to the warehouse and do a tasting, or maybe I go to them and do a quick comped service. If they've never had a coffee cart, they've never had your experience, and there's a lot of work and potential money at stake, it might be worth finessing that one a little bit.
As far from the angle of like building up to annual contracts through repeated service, either way, repeat service is like a huge part of growing your company, right? That's part of how you compound from year over years. You build a client list, you do a good job with them, and they eventually start having you frequently or more often. I'm just curious, Justin, if you have an instinct on what percentage of your customers are repeat customers, or what percentage of your volume or revenue comes from repeat business, and how people can like assess if they're retaining and keeping those if they're maximizing their opportunity to get repeat business and to rebook people that they've already booked in the past, and what they could do better there if they're not.
That is a great question. I wish I had a concrete answer on this. I just had a product feature idea that like we should track, and eventually we should track in FlashQuotes leads with more than one booking and display that as a percentage. And then to actually know and have that metric of like this percent of your leads, or rather this percent of your bookings have booked more than once. They're repeat customers. That would be like crazy powerful. I would like to know that. I don't really know that. My spidey sense says, what I know is that in year one of business, in year one, when we launch a new city, our booking percents tend to be lower, like 15%. In year two and beyond, it tends to, it actually might be like 12%, 15%, depending on the city. In year two and beyond, it often rises to like 20%, 25%, with a lot of those percentage points coming from the people who tend to book kind of on like not necessarily an exact fixed recurring basis, but they have these events that, either quarterly, annually, in an approximate timeline, and that bumps it. So I'd say, if we bump our booking percentage from like 15, like 20 plus, that means like probably 25 to 30% of our customers are recurring customers. That feels like a reasonable estimate. And yeah, I'd say that's probably the case.
Yeah. One of the nice things about having a CRM like FlashQuotes is you gradually build up this database of everyone who's ever booked you or inquired with you, their contact information, their phone number, their email. I know you've experimented in the past with like doing some outreach or texting people, doing a mass text message or a mass email to try and drum up some business from that list. Like, what's worked there, if anything, as far as like, how do you segment? Do you just go for people who've booked you in the past? Do you go for everyone who's inquired? Like, have you measured or tested like what works well as far as trying to get a second booking or a third booking from someone
I mean, we do send out email blasts probably 5 to 6 times a year. It's either in advance of busy seasons in the May and December, in advance of those, telling people, hey, we are going to fill up. You should get on the books early. And we do that if it's busy season. And if it's slow season, we may offer a discount, whatever it is, 10% off or something, just to drum up some business. I unfortunately do not have any hard metrics on those, but what I do know is our lead volume dramatically increases in the 2 to 5 days after sending out like a big email or text blast. Yeah, web traffic, lead volume, and then bookings do pretty significantly increase. But that's something where like the more you do it, the more of a diminishing return it can have. So for us, at least, we probably only do it every 2 months or something. But actually, I mean, we do have like FlashQuotes has all that data. We could display the percentage of clients with more than one booking, and that would be so sick. Eventually we will when we have time.
Yeah.
We have a lot of stuff for building.
Yeah. You can kind of get an idea of it on the reports tab because we break down like the top clients by revenue by time period. So you can see who, using revenue as a proxy for the number of bookings, you can see who your biggest repeat people are.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point.
It would be interesting to look at frequency and how often people are coming on a recurring basis at some sort of predictable interval, like you said, Justin. Is it every year around the same time because it's teacher appreciation or something that is like certainly annual?
Yep.
Is it every quarter, or is it somebody who's just booking events for somebody else, but the frequency is enough that it warrants kind of more bespoke and tailored communications that are on a frequency aligned to when, you want to strike them with an email as soon as they're thinking, oh, I need to book a cart, right? How do you time that out really nicely? Because in a way, your approach right now is more just, hey, let me not bother the people that are doing it every year or don't care. But then you might be missing out on following up with the people that would benefit from a follow-up every month or two, or something very specific to their niche.
Yeah. That would be the dream. That would be the dream, to know their in advance, know their expected booking frequency and ping them with emails. I mean, the easiest way would just be every new booking that comes in, just hit them with an automatic rebooking check-in at the 6 and 12 month mark. 6 months from when they booked and 12 months from when they booked, hit them with like, hey, just wanted to check in, see if you have any upcoming events. Maybe 3 months.
Or from their event.
No, from the time they book, because from the time they book, they've booked at like 3 weeks in advance of their
Oh,
event.
they've thought about that.
And
Yeah,
so
that's
you'd
good.
want to hit them, like 3, 6, 12 months from that probably. But yeah, either way, that would be powerful. And that actually probably will be possible soon with FlashQuotes, right? Like with some of the triggers and workflows we're
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That actually goes into another question that Cynthia had that we figured we'd tack on here just because it's very relevant about post-event messaging and FlashQuotes, things like automating client feedback, asking for reviews, given how critical reviews are, especially on Google with the Google Maps integration. Short answer, yes. By the time you're listening to this, it will be live. A trigger based off of when the last event was in a booking and a trigger based off of when the first event was in a booking. And you could do any sort of duration before or after those triggers. Those will be some advanced workflow triggers that are part of our FlashQuotes Plus and Pro plan. It's a great way to ask for feedback, send people emails, 7, 3, and 1 day before an event to make them feel really comfortable, set expectations, let them know who's coming, provide information, and a great way to ask for feedback and whatnot after the event. The quote booked trigger that you just mentioned, Justin, which is, hey, I'm going to do something 3 months from when this quote was booked. That'll also be available, and that'll be available for everyone there. And booking confirmation will be a part of that.
Yeah.
Or maybe it won't be. Maybe the way you're looking at me says it won't be available to everyone. We haven't officially talked about that, so
Yeah, well, we'll see. But all I can say, y'all, like this is huge. Daniel is stating this matter of factly, but these are crazy. Like these are crazy workflows. Of course, Goodhart, we've been doing that stuff for years now. But these confirmations, your client's skin begins to tingle and crawl and get scared if they don't hear from you like 7 days before their event, 24 hours before, or if it's like a wedding that they booked months ago, 30 days before. Like they start getting antsy, they start getting uncomfortable. And if your clients are reaching out to you and asking like, hey, like are we good, you've waited too long. They're uncomfortable, they don't know what's going on, they feel uncertain, and you're giving them, some anxiety. These workflows are crazy powerful. These are like the gold standard, I think, of really customer service in the catering industry. And so to like soothe your client's anxiety, up your professionalism, and do it all on autopilot is insane. If you're listening to this, like pause it, go set up these workflows in your FlashQuotes Plus account, or book a call with me. I'll help you. If you've got real bookings and leads come through, like these are crazy powerful. Don't sleep on these.
yeah, absolutely.
I think one of the cool things about it is they're flexible, right? So you can be creative with them, but at a minimum, I think we're advocating that everyone should have a client pre-event confirmation sequence that tells them, here, yes, we're coming. Here's who's coming. Here, here's the link to your booking confirmation page again if you need it, and a post-event ask how it went and ask for a Google review sequence. Like those are both best practices that we see across the industry that everyone should be asking for, that will help your clients have a better experience and help you get more Google reviews, which will help you get more leads and rank higher in Google. So those are essentials, I think, for every company that has FlashQuotes.
Yeah. My vision would be eventually that we actually pre-build these for people that, of course, they can only access them when they turn on the Plus plan, but having these pre-built, I think, for new companies would be incredible. But in the meantime, yeah, it'll be quick and easy. 5 minutes, you can build them all yourself and harness the power. They're going to be awesome. So
Cool. Next question is from Tushana George about tastings. Do you offer tastings for potential clients? If so, do you charge? I never heard of this, but curious how to navigate. You said we were kind of dipping into it a little bit, Justin, with hey, this is a potential large client who's interested in an annual contract. They need to taste the product, experience the product as fast as possible. And I'm not going to let a quote or charging for that single service get in the way of really shining. Maybe say more about that or other tasting strategies you've deployed or avoided for whatever reason.
Yeah, man, I really don't like doing tastings at our headquarters. And of course, then it's prohibitively expensive to do them on site, in which case we'd probably charge them for the full service, unless they were like a really VIP high dollar client with a lot of recurring or high revenue potential. So yeah, sometimes a wedding person, it's actually very, very common for caterers in the wedding industry, bartenders, food caterers, to do tastings. Like, right, Zach, you, Daniel, I don't remember. You probably both did tastings for potentially food, alcohol, or some other cake, whatever, at your weddings. It's very, very common. And so, especially for wedding folks, you will get those requests. Hey, we want to taste it, which is fair and really valid. It's kind of annoying from our perspective. It's a little bit challenging to do. So I think what I've settled on is like, first of all, is it a deal breaker? I kind of try to ramp it up. Like, I may send them a bag of coffee and the bag of coffee is free, but they cover shipping. I do want them to be invested a little bit. This is probably my least favorite way, but it is also the lowest effort because you have no idea, if you have no idea how they're going to brew that coffee, or even if they're good at brewing coffee. Or if it's in a Mr. Coffee machine and it's going to be kind of terrible or what. So that's my least favorite way, but it is the lowest effort and it can at least give them some indication of what the product is going to be like. I don't know if there's an equivalent of this sort of thing in different industries like mobile bar or, ice cream catering. You obviously can't. That'd be like crazy expensive to ship frozen goods. So that's one way. It's my least favorite, but we do it in some cases. And then there's like the warehouse tasting. Not everyone can do this, but if you do have a warehouse space or some sort of space that could be moderately guest facing, it's not really meant for that, but you have maybe a front room that you could spruce up and set up and serve them there, then we'll charge, I forget what we charge, like, $100, $99. We're not trying to make money. We're just trying to cover our labor costs on this. And then we also, I think, will credit that amount to their booking if they do book. And they'll definitely have much closer to like the full experience, right? And it's a pretty low risk way for them to try. It's a little bit annoying to coordinate, but can be very, very high value for them. And like, if someone wants a tasting and they do make the effort to come do it, we book like almost 100% of those. So that's very high intent, and also like high effort on their side. They have to drive to you and everything. So if they're willing to do all that and pay a little bit, and you do halfway decent job, that booking is probably going to be in the bag.
Do you have, like in the case of these potential annual contracts we were talking about, is that something where it's still a tasting at your warehouse historically, just to get that intent from them? Or have you gone out and almost like done a service as a comped service? That's less a tasting, I guess. But it's just
I will
different...
if it's a high enough quote and a large enough income potential, we may do a fully comped, like 30-minute or 1-hour service for somebody. It really just kind of got to run the numbers on, what the quote is, what the lifetime value of that customer could be.
Cool. All right. We have Renzo Alcala from Take a Shot asking about long events. Hey everyone, love to hear your thoughts on how you approach long events. Say an 8-hour serving with just one barista. Do you plan lunch breaks? How do you handle refilling water, emptying wastewater? Just all that over a really long. I think first off, just shout out again to the school community. It works best when, we don't have to be involved and it's people helping each other answer these questions. And a lot of the responses were, hey, for that sort of event of that duration, I'm always going to have 2 baristas just so I can have somebody covering the other person. Just as a rule, that duration of time is not going to be conducive to a single person trying to operate the whole thing. I don't know if you've historically done that as well, Justin, even regardless of the count of people involved, or if not, if there's another strategy that you've used to deal with long events. if there's just a single barista.
Yeah, I mean, transparency, because we do tend to just do one barista, one cart in most cases. And so I think transparency is key here, letting them know, hey, our barista will need to take breaks. I also think the signage on the cart, like people need to know, there needs to be like, hey, gone back in 10, quick lunch break, quick restroom break, that sort of thing, as opposed to just like the barista's gone, no one knows where they are, especially the client. And so that's key. Transparency before the day of the event on the break times and what that means. And then, communicating there with some sort of signage if the barista is going to be absent from the cart for any period. And just so that, let's say the client who booked you was gone somewhere and they come to the cart and they didn't know about the break and the barista's gone, like that's very upsetting if there's been no communication around it, which is, yeah.
Speaking of signage, how would one mount their signage? Well, Justin mounts his signage with custom, bespoke, crafted, beautiful mounting objects from his 3D printer. If you want to learn more about that and get a deep dive, hanging out with Justin, looking at his warehouse, go to flashquotes.com/masterclass. I think that's it, right?
It is. Yeah.
All right. And put in your email and hang out with Justin for, it's like a 30-minute video.
Yeah, it's kind of a nerdy deep dive warehouse and equipment tour.
I love a good nerdy deep dive. So good. All right, man. What questions do we have next?
Let's keep it going.
Sent my first quote for 10K plus yesterday.
Ooh.
This was in response to, this is Nico from, is it Catering or Catering? I don't even know how to pronounce this name. Do you guys know?
No.
Catering?
Catering.
Friend Nico asking about speed of booking for larger quotes. This would be interesting to look at in the data just to see, within FlashQuotes, if there's a meaningful delta between smaller and larger quotes and booking speed. But generally, everything we've seen is that the faster you quote, the better. Even for a large quote, you want to get it in people's hands. You want to show that you're responsive, that you're there, differentiate yourself. I think there's a first mover advantage for sure in the quoting world. Like you get some special attention if you can quote very quickly. So, I don't know what y'all think about that, but
yeah, I would just add on. I think this was a comment in response to probably our 5 levels episode recently, where we were talking about the different, what did we call them? Not choke points, like bottlenecks for each level of catering. But we talked about how the challenge of if you're a solo owner operator and you're out working events all the time, you can't be as responsive necessarily, or it's harder to be responsive to quotes as soon as they come in. And so I think I gave an example about like, what if you're working a low dollar event and all of a sudden a huge quote came in, but it was already booked by the time you finished working that shift because you weren't able to get a quote out to them. So yeah, I'm curious what you think, Justin. My gut says that people's budgets are what people's budgets are, and if you have an instant quote in their hand and they like it and it looks good, they're probably just going to book it. They may or may not. Maybe some people will wait longer or mull it over if it's a really large quote, but other people will be surprisingly quick. And we've heard stories even on this podcast of people getting instant booked for $50,000, just because the right time, right place, and the decision maker's ready to go. So yeah, what's your experience with turnaround time on large quotes?
I mean, larger quotes definitely, they tend to have more people involved in the decision-making process and more logistics and potentially more like multiple days and different service times. So they can, in some cases, take longer to finalize. But regardless of that, I think it's not necessarily about getting it over the finish line immediately, but already, like, if this is a race, you have already sprinted out way ahead in the communication with the client. And so, you're going to win the race. Even if the actual booking is not finalized like immediately that day, you sprinting out in front from the moment the gun fires, or whatever the racing analogy we want to use, like, from the first second, you sprinting out in front, beginning communication, sending the quote, having that professionalism, even if they don't book that day, like, they will likely choose you, and you will be the one who gets across the finish line first in this case. So
yeah, I think there's that's a great point and great clarification. I think for beginners and people who are newer or haven't had a booking that big before, there might be temptation to take more time putting the quote together and to like really, to really double, second guess your math and think about, do I need to customize the quote more? Do I need to do something special for these people? And I think we would just encourage you, don't delay. Get the quote into their hands as quickly as possible. Like, know your numbers, know your math, have your proposal set up in a nice way, and get the first person in their inbox with a quote is going to be like going to have a huge head start, like Justin's saying, in booking them. So don't wait around when you've got a huge quote in your inbox, because that's not going to help you win it.
Yeah, I think something people get wrong is that they're just afraid to charge, like afraid to ask for money. They're afraid to price their service and just say, this is what we're doing. It's going to be awesome. We're going to have 2 people there. Maybe we'll have 2 carts. Like, these are my real costs to put this on. And my service is good. It's great, in fact. And I need to charge this amount of money. It seems like a lot of the hurdle on pricing these, at least from people I've talked to, is like, I don't know, like I should ask for more details. Like, do they really want this? Do they really need all this stuff? I think there's something to be said about being bold and pricing it competitively, but fairly, and really, owning that price. One thing that we've said a lot on this pod and elsewhere, for these bigger quotes, a lot of times people are spending other people's money, or they're spending the money of their company, right? They're not intimately attached to those finances. And we have, especially Zach and I working in the corporate world, have experience of doing just this, going on events and maybe even going on events with teams and spending money that is the company's money, not foolishly, but not as though we're on a tight budget either. So, if you need to do some little mental gymnastics to make yourself feel better about putting out a big quote, maybe that's a really helpful one for a lot of these big opportunities. What they really want to do is do their job well. And if their job is hire the best coffee caterer, best bar caterer, best photo booth, like, be the best. Allow them to make that a really, really easy mission accomplished check mark. They may not care that much how much they're paying for it. In fact, what we've seen in pricing strategy is they may feel better because they booked the best, the most expensive one. So,
yeah. I also think another pro tip here that we see, that we've learned from some of the biggest operators in the space, you should really try and avoid like negotiating against yourself, like responding to them with like how they can cut down their quote, or how they can how they can get a cheaper discount. But you can craft the quote in a way that makes it self-evident from the line items in the presentation, like how they could pull the levers to get a better deal if they wanted to, right? You can convey it in a way that it's this much per cart or this much per hour or things like that, so that they understand like, oh, okay, if I wanted to get rid of these 2 add-ons and reduce it by 2 hours, I can probably get a fresh quote and get a better deal. But don't I don't know, maybe you disagree with that. I don't know, Justin, but my instinct is like, you shouldn't come immediately back to someone who just made a huge inquiry and say, would you want this cheaper alternative instead? Like, you should try and price them for what they asked for and see what they say.
Yeah. My general rule of thumb is like, if they're trying to fit a budget, that's fine. Like, I'll work with you, but expect that you will receive less if you're paying less. Like, I'm not just going to throw all the same stuff in at the same price, right? Like, we either need to like cut hours or do something. Like, yeah, we can fit within your budget, but because you're paying less, you are going to be receiving a little bit less, as opposed to just like, oh, well, my budget's only 500. Can you do this for 500? It's like 600, 700, whatever it is. It's like, no, but if we cut stuff, maybe we can, possibly, but also maybe not.
Yeah. I think that's also why your strategy, and maybe you can just repeat it for listeners here, about how to present your pricing page on your website is really important, right? Because you don't tell them exactly what the math is, but you tell them these are the variables, right? If the pricing is based on duration, it's based on how far away you are, it's based on the add-ons, it's based on the number of baristas and carts that need to come serve you.
Yeah. Yeah, I stand by it very much, and it played out for me recently. If a software or service does not have a pricing tab, I get freaked out and I think it's crazy expensive. And that played out recently for a software I was kind of inquiring with. They didn't have a pricing tab and I was nervous. And sure enough, after the sales call, $1,500 a month, I didn't move forward with it. Similar thing could happen with with catering, where if don't give them the price until you have their contact info, but have a pricing tab and tell them the logic behind how you price, guest count, service duration, travel, whatever it may be, just to soothe their anxiety so they don't get freaked out and think they can't afford you.
What do you do, speaking of guest count, that is one of the variables, I think that's sometimes people try and get a little bit creative with. What do you do when someone says they submitted their original quote for 500 guest count and then they come back and say, oh, actually, I think only like 100 people are going to get coffee? Like, what do you say to them?
It's definitely a dangerous territory to be in. I hate the nickel and diming that comes with guest counts being up or down, or, after the event, the attendance wasn't what they expected and they might ask for a discount. I mean, I'm definitely an advocate of just cutting all that out and just kind of pricing per hour based on your max capacity. That way you're going to always be profitable, never get taken advantage of. And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely more of an advocate of that. Let's see. Also, I don't know if we have a natural segue into this, but I do just have to plug that Daniel has been doing super incredible work on our Google Calendar integration. So for those of you who are on the Plus and Pro plans, and you've been wondering, how do I get the event brief to my staff in an easy way? And the answer up to now has just shoot them a text or email with the link. It is pretty quick and easy. But recently, of course, we launched the full Google Calendar integration, which means that every single booking that comes through in FlashQuotes is going to automatically sync to whatever Google Calendar you want it to. You can choose whether you want that syncing to be entire shift duration or only service start and end time. And on the Pro plan, if you assign a staff in FlashQuotes, that staff member will automatically get invited to that Google Calendar event where they have a link to the event brief. So really, really powerful. People have been incredibly happy with it. And it basically, in a lot of cases, I know there's a lot of mid-sized companies out there, and mine included, who have had to have a secondary staffing software, whether Connect Team or, When I Work or Sling or, pay whatever it is, $60, $100 a month for an extra software just to manage all the staffing and events. If you're a heavy Google Calendar user, you can cut that software and you can start saving whatever it is, $500-$600 a year if you wanted and are happy with a Google Calendar integration. Check it out if you haven't already. If you're already on the Pro plan, just go into settings, integrations, configure your calendar, and you can control that stuff. It's been awesome and people have been absolutely loving it. So be sure to check that out.
One more plug for those who stuck all the way to the end. I've gotten some questions about our event next year. We teased, I think, a couple episodes ago that we want to do an in-person event in Denver. We're not ready to announce it yet, but we can tell you that it is happening. It is happening in June of 2026 here. We're going to throw a really awesome event. We've already got some amazing speakers and stuff lined up, so we can't wait to announce it. Keep an eye out in the next few weeks for a formal announcement around that. But if you want to make sure there's a limited number of spots, and I think we will also probably do some discounts for early bird tickets. So if you want to be ahead of the game on that and make sure you find out as soon as possible, make sure that you follow us on Instagram, subscribe to the YouTube, and turn on the notification bell for YouTube, and make sure you're on the email newsletter as well. So that's flashquotes.com/newsletter. Those are most likely the channels where we're going to be plugging discounts, early bird announcements, getting on the wait list. So if you want to come hang out in person in Denver next year, make sure you are paying attention to those places in the next few weeks.
Heck yeah, it's going to be dope. There'll be some big names, the who's who.
The who's who. If you're just listening, Justin raised his eyebrows up and down. Wow, amazing.
He's doing Morse code with his blinking and his eyebrows to
Wow. All right. Well, thanks for hanging out, people. A lot of exciting stuff coming down the pike. A lot of stuff already out. I know everybody's out there hustling and slaying it. A lot of industries are very, very busy this time of year. So keep doing amazing work. Be kind to your people that are working with you. Keep delivering amazing service and blessing the world with joy and awesome products. And we'll see you next time. Keep giving us your questions. We'll keep hanging out.
Bye, y'all. See you next time.